That's right.
So if we go to the draft prep sheet,
The live draft sheet.
yeah, draft prep and then live draft.
Got
it. How is that starting to form out, do you think?
Let me see.
Right now,
I like that. Oh, go ahead. I'll keep looking.
If you change in K4, right now it's Night's Watch. So if we change to Greyjoy and look at my name, it'll likely pop up as a void. Because I've said that I'm not comfortable playing Greyjoy.
Nice.
I'm still like ranked high. So I'm not sure how to make it so if I'm the best player and I write I'm not comfortable with Greyjoy, I'm probably still worth drafting.
Worth a bid, yeah.
Right. But right now it just avoid this guy. But I mean,
but there's also
there's not 5,000 players, so
and the top players are a pretty select group, anyways. You know,
yeah,
like the players where I would just disregard a faction desire. That's a small group, anyways. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we get Eric Green, we get Eric Green. I'm not that worried about what he wants to play.
Yeah.
But he does, though he does want to play Greyjoy. He'll be good with whatever. But when it's those kind of those second, third players that we're going to have to fill our roster out, where I think that becomes really important.
Yeah.
What else is going on in the house chasing column? What determines whether something is chase or avoid or average?
So on this sheet, it's just copied from the first sheet, and
so just whatever people selected, or in their survey.
Let's see. If something is chase, it means that you are above 52nd rank, which is, I believe, your cutoff. And you have selected your house as something you're comfortable with.
Got it.
If they
so
are
by being below 52, I am a void for all 8 houses.
Yes.
Okay. What was the thinking on 52? Just that, like,
we can change that easily. But that's the one of your cutoffs in the auction projection max, I think.
Right, that's the bottom third begins after that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or
half.
That's
half, actually.
Bottom half.
And that's bottom half.
I don't think it's going to be achievable that we can only draft players from the top half.
But I took one of those cutoffs and added it. That's easily changed.
Okay.
And then it also checks. So it's an if-else thing. So first, if you have higher than 52, lower than 52 rank, or higher, I don't know what to say, and you have selected that you want to play this house, then it's a chase. If either the rank is below 52, or you have selected that you don't want to play this house, you get an avoid. Otherwise, you get an average, which I believe shows up as fine. Yeah. In the E column on the live draft sheet. But I mean, I can make that formula longer so that we have more spread. Want?
Yeah, I'm wondering if that kind of cutoff is actually necessary, because it might get in the way of, like, when we get down to, like, say you need a couple of players that you're going to buy, both of them for just, $2 each type of thing. You do want that information there. You didn't want to be in this situation, but you are, and we do have these dollar values that are saying, this person's only a $2 player, but hey, they like Martell, or something. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I can make the chase like rank 30 and above, and then make nice to, regardless of your rank, or let's say house or whatever. So regardless of your rank, if you have selected that you're comfortable with this house, you will see that. I mean, we can see that either way by scrolling right, of course, but it's harder to see.
Now, do you guys think, especially Trey, based on some of the models that we've created, do you think it's going to be possible, like realistically, to get a complete kind of top 2/3 team based on our rankings? Do you guys think it'll be possible, or do you find it likely that we will kind of have to dip below the line, as it were?
I think it's possible, but I think that it would. I think this is a good thing for us to discuss, because I think it would be possible if that was your sole goal. Because what you know, in order to achieve that, you would essentially have to say, okay, we can price enforce people in the top 24, but we'll take them to like 80% of our numbers, and that's it.
Right.
And we're going to be targeting people that are in in the 30s and 40s and 50s only. And we built that kind of team. Now, is that what Neil Kimball did last year? I'd kind of have to go and look at it again, but that's kind of the way it felt, is that he didn't have
no star players.
Yeah, no star players, and he went for depth over kind of a high-low strategy. And I think one of the things I saw Buzz talking about was, does it make sense to actually push on some top players so that what you're really trying to do is put 5 or 6 people into the cut with a chance for additional wins in the cut? Does that make sense? So that's a bigger strategic consideration.
Yeah, but I mean, there still is, especially with these very large teams, there's so many more wins to be had during the round robin, like
Yes.
the cut wins are important, but only if it's close. And last year, honestly, the cut wins weren't that important for Night's Watch. It was almost locked up before day 2 started. It wasn't mathematically locked up, but it wasn't long into day 2. And we did not have great success Night's Watch in the late rounds. We just got into a position where no one could catch us. Yeah.
Martell did have success and couldn't catch up.
Right, exactly. So I think that showed us that scraping together as many wins as possible.
Sure.
And kind of like what Buzz said earlier, that yes, like a 5-2 and a 3-4 is better than 2 4-3s, right? But having 10 4-3s or 6 4-3s is a lot better than having 2 1-6s or 3 1-6s or whatever that we could end up kind of falling into that place if we do have those bottom guys in the squad. Like I'm not married to any of these names. Like there's no one here I'm willing that's left. I mean, with the way the hands are working, there's really no one here that I'm gonna, I think, irrationally bid for, and that's good. I think we can build a really strong team with the right faction to get enough in the cut and do well. Like if we can build that good, avoiding the bottom third, and maybe even avoiding the top 5 or 6 if their prices are too high, that they would exclude us from avoiding that bottom third. I think that's important.
I think we need to more knowledge on the unknown guys. We need. So I think you said Yoram, that he might be a hidden dollar player.
Very much so.
If we can find 2 or 3 of those, we might have more capital to spend on the higher end as well, or just up our ranks by 10. So instead of chasing 50s, we're chasing 40s.
So thinking about strategy and like not just targeting Yotam, but bidding in such a way and putting people up for bid in such a way that someone like Yotam or even someone like Stefan would kind of fall to us for a very cheap price, because Stefan also he's a guy who at
Stefan
every
who?
tournament I've ever Stefan Topsfet. He's kind of running.
A German guy.
Yeah, he's a German guy. Yeah, he plays in the Bay Area, and he was $1 last year, and I forget who he played with. His performance wasn't great.
He was Targ. No, he was. I think he made the cut. Yeah, he made
Did
the
he?
cut. Yes.
As a $1 player.
Yes.
Okay, so he did do well.
Yes. He was identified by Ibri, and
Yes.
he's from. Oh, you said he's from the Bay Area, yeah.
Yeah, he's played in the Bay Area for the last few years, and every tournament I played with him, I would say he and I are kind of 50-50 when we play. We play a lot. We've played a lot, and he's always either in the cut or on the bubble. He's very much a 4-win player. I think almost guaranteed, as long as he's with a house he's comfortable with.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now, Ibri's not. Well, I guess Ibri will be bidding with James, so I doubt he goes for $1 this year. He's probably off the table. But Yotam could be like the Stefan of 2019, like that. He is similar. He went top 4 at Kubla, not this last year, but the year before, and he does very well in Bay Area tournaments. But he never travels like outside of Mountain View. He plays at like one store only. So if there's a store championship or a regional there, he plays and he does very well, and he's won a few regionals there. But the question is, back to my original point of kind of the bid strategy, is like when to put a player like that up, right?
Right.
You put them up for $1. Do you do it early when people still have big banks and they're like, well, I'll drop $2, $3, $4, $5? Do you do it later when purses are tighter? But then you run the risk of someone else kind of having
I also
targeted.
Need a first $1 player.
Right. So it's like, where do we put those guys up to try to get them? I don't think it can be too late, but it probably can't be too early, because people save their banks early, but there's also those players who are like, oh, well, that guy's definitely at least a $3 bet. I'm not going to not bet $3. They won't bet $9. They won't bet $10 on that player, but they'll throw a few dollars. Like, there's this moment in drafts where it happens where like decent players just happen to go for $1. And it's that, I don't know, it's that weird time where people have maybe got 1 or 2 players on their team, and they're waiting for their next person to be kind of someone they've targeted, and they're kind of ignoring everybody else unless it's a name they have on their list, on their immediate list. Because most people just write down, as far as my experience goes, people just kind of write down their list, or maybe have a quick Excel sheet. Nothing like what we have prepared here. So it's about like finding where those guys might hit. And I don't know that it needs to be in our system, but we do need to have, I think, like a large list of these guys who might be kind of our mid-draft selections after we've got a faction, and maybe after we've got a big player, or maybe like we get one big player and then we start working these guys, and if we get enough bargains, go in on a second big player before they're all gone. I don't know. I'm just like trying to think about how to really get those guys, because in the past I feel like it's been, at least my strategy for getting them has just been kind of like just kind of constantly chasing them, and like I would get 1 or 2 at $6 or $7, and then someone else would get someone that I kind of thought was equal with the guys I picked up, but they get them for $1 or $2, and I go, dang it! Like, if I had just waited, I think I could have got them for $2 or $3.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on this. I think the idea that we're going to know when this is going to happen beforehand is not knowable. I think one of the nice things about actually having hard numbers like this that add up to the entire draft pool is that we can see certain trends, and we can say, okay, we didn't really want to buy here at the top, but it looks like guys that we have for $23 are going for 27. So people are overspending right now. So that's definitely not a time to, trot out the name of the guy you actually want. And other times you can recognize when people are starting to save their money or something, because that player that we had at 11, maybe we just got them at 6, and that probably means, hey, keep going, keep buying. So the best indication of when to do it is going to be actually, looking and seeing what players are going for versus our values and identifying trends that way. Is what I would say.
I don't know of anyone. Hi, by the way. Sorry, I was late.
Hey, James.
I don't know if anyone sort of was moneyballing it as seriously in the previous years, but is there any like past projections we can make on, well, this person had this strategy at this point in the draft and then changed to this strategy later on? Because I assume I assume every team, either the region or the hand, has been a region previously.
Yes. I think that's a yes.
It's a more experienced group this year.
Yeah, definitely. Like
they're going in with 2, not 1.
Yeah. So, and like those, it's tough because in the past it's been like bidding and going through the process. It's in such a vacuum. It's hard to really gauge people's like other regions' strategies in real time because like we've never had a great way to see how teams were kind of filling out and what order things were happening, and it's happened so fast that it's tough to like look at the live board and figure out, okay, wait, what happened in which order? Because nothing's really being placed in order, but ours will. Like our new sheet will say that.
Yeah.
So it's been really hard to keep track. Like 2/3 into a draft, like really how we got there. You just kind of blink. You're like, okay, here's where we are now. I'm not really sure how we got here, but let's just keep going. And so to answer that question, like I can't even think how to go back and look at previous like live draft trends.
No, it's so the order wasn't specified at all. I think there were other live streams where you could go back and write it down from, right?
Yes, like you'd have to go back and watch the whole.
Otherwise,
it's
draft. A large old Skype chat that might not exist anymore, or nothing.
Yeah, it's more it's the broadcasts on Twitch that I've looked at in the past.
The new sheet I made for Ryan, it will track. Okay, this was number 3, and this was number 10, etc. And by whom, or what?
Will it also keep track of
who nominated and who got it and to what
and the
price?
History of bids?
History of bids, no, because I still think he wants to have bids in the Skype chat or whatever.
Chat box, yeah.
I
not
mean,
on the dock.
I would be. What I would do is make an IRC bot and have everything automated. And then you have chat logs or stat logs that exports into a sheet or something. But I mean, I think he wants. So my sheet is very, very robotic. I think he wants some semblance of humanity in there.
Did that answer your question, Mama? Was that actually what you were asking?
Yeah, that answers it. I was just wondering if there was a way of sort of saying, well, this this region is likely to be bidding for these types of players at this point, and these types of players at this point, and a faction at this point, and that sort of thing.
I mean,
but it sounds like possibly we might be able to do that for next year based on this year, but can't really do yet.
So, I mean, I might go back and watch because I'm not doing anything during the winter break. So
well, I mean, we do have some wild cards. Like Dustin's never done this before, and Roy did it for Jesse's birthday tournament, but I can't remember how what his strategy. It's hard to remember back, but like there will be some people who I think will be able to take advantage of in the process.
Yeah, so Roy has Jesse as his hand, and I think both of them will be by heart rather than by stats.
Yes. They will bleed through the nose for Wasa players. Yes. I can almost guarantee it. And we can exploit that. Like we could bid those up and make them pay top for every one of those players.
I mean,
And-
yeah,
and-
I would. I mean, not being in the process of a WASA player, regardless, is probably wrong.
But right. But they'll bid on all of them. Like they'll get
Yes,
5
yes.
and then end up with 6 $1 players just so that they can have WASA because their faith in WASA is so strong. But
Yeah.
I
Which
don't think
WASA players have come?
Right now, it's
Platt,
Platt.
Rotz, Hansen, Bohan.
Are all of them?
Those-
So because the only one that
They're
has
not on the sheet yet.
responded is Jake Platt.
I thought Bohan was on here.
Well, this list hasn't been updated in a while,
No.
right? I mean,
And
Yeah, this was
Bohan
updated
was on
5
the
days
list
ago.
of people who accepted.
Sean Bohan's number 29.
This is definitely not a full list. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Bohan was actually very quick. Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll open the.
Maybe I'm thinking wrong, but I thought both Hansen and Brat said they were coming.
Hope he hasn't sorted again. Let's see. Okay, no, it's only 2 right now. Platt and Bohan.
Okay.
Right now. But Bratz and Nick Hansen are the most late birds
Yes.
in the world. I think they booked their flight to Stockholm like 2 days before they went.
so we think this list is current as of like the 23, as of today, Buzz, or is this 5 days old? I mean, the like looking at the sign up responses sheet that I can see you're in as well.
It's 5 days old. We're missing Tyson Voigtlander and Matthew Jenkins.
But this is actually like there haven't been other people that have signed up since Matthew Jenkins, as far as we know. This is what we were looking at is what Ryan has.
So signups, maybe, but these are only the responses to.
Okay.
So this is not the sign up. This is, okay, you've signed up here. Take this form, please. So I think there are like at least 5 or 4 that are signed up but haven't done this sheet yet.
Okay.
Well, actually, how? Yeah, there are 104 spots.
We're not going to get to 104.
No, and then, but then he said there were 19 left, so there are 85 signed up, I think. So that's 12 more players. 13, 14, 15, 16, 16. 16 names that should be on here that aren't.
Okay.
Right now.
So we may not hit capacity.
I don't think. Yeah.
No,
it
it
looks
doesn't
really
look-
unlikely.
Only got what 10 days, 12 days to.
And so if we make it, like, say, hypothetically, if we make it to, instead of 104, we only make it to 96, that's going to ripple the amount of money that we start with too, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the rule is just $10 a slot.
I think so.
That's correct, Sid? You're thinking?
Yes, $10 a slot. Yeah, and that
houses aren't a slot, right?
it changes the amount that was bid for the hands too. Like it changes that evaluation quite a bit with
Right.
that.
Oh, these
dropping
hand
down.
numbers could change?
No,
No.
the hand numbers won't change. Just like the overall, bank remaining.
Mhm.
Well,
That's
I
right.
guess if it's the number of players dropping too, maybe it doesn't have an effect. But I'm just thinking, like, does that make Roy's pick of Jesse at 29 like that much more
Of his bank.
of a bite,
Percentage-wise.
right, out of his bank percentage wise? Yeah.
I think House is a slot, by the way, Buzz. I think from looking at it from past years.
It is, yeah.
All right. Well, we can. Do we have a date where they're going to actually lock it? Where Ryan's going to lock it?
I think he'll
Already?
take people right up to like the day
day
before the
before
draft.
is the lock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Day
so
before
we need
draft.
to be flexible. Okay, I need to be flexible on that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
There may be some 11th hour adjustments, especially if like, Bratz decides to join the day before. It's like, whoa. That'll have a big change. So I mean, I think general strategy is faction first.
Yes.
Yes.
And I've been thinking a lot about kind of our Tyrell discussions and our discussions of the others, and I don't want people to think that like I've moved away from what we thought were the top three. I still think those are our top three, though. I'm of a mind to not necessarily avoid Greyjoy, because I think Greyjoy will probably go for the most. And if somehow they don't, and there's a bargain to be had there, I would bid on it. But Andreas, when all said and done, you'll probably be the best player on the team, probably. And I think it would be a pretty boneheaded move to pick a faction that our best player is not super successful / comfortable with.
I mean, the Jank Tank Greyjoy son that's Jacob has been playing. It's ridiculous.
Like up your alley ridiculous, or
Well, it's a Martell deck, so I guess.
right. So I guess squeeze him in that way. But even like myself, I like Greyjoy, but I don't get excited about Greyjoy. Right. Targ and Stark are much more interesting to me, and I think they're more interesting to you.
Oh yeah, I love Stark, and I'm fine with Targ.
Oh, sorry, Sid. Finish.
No,
go ahead, James. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I did a little calculation on the 2019 player rankings thing where they've had to, we've assigned like a rating of 0, 1, or 2 for each faction for each player.
Right.
And interestingly, on that list, Targ is comfortably the top. Like, if you take the average of each of those, Targ is at a 1.52. Then Stark at a 1.34 as the next, with Lannister and Greyjoy joint third with 1.32. Then Tyrell at 1.23, Martell at 1.12, Night's Watch at 1.09, and only Baratheon has more people disliking it than liking it at 0.88. So that, to me, suggests that of the big ones, Targ would be the one to push towards.
Where have you output this?
I didn't want to fuck up your spreadsheet, so I just opened Excel and did it in there.
Okay. You can just scroll right and pick something.
Yeah, you can just add a tab.
Yeah. Nothing breaks. All long as you like right click, insert to the right or whatever, every formula changes.
Sure.
So I'm sorry. Tell me again, because I missed the beginning of what you were saying. You've looked just at what people say they want to play, and that
just
came
in terms
with the
of
highest desirability.
Yeah, like obviously, that's not going to be the be all and end all by any means. But just in terms of if you're bidding on the faction early, it might be beneficial to try and bid on a faction that more people are going to want to play.
Right.
Because it gives you more options for who you can bid on later. And it looks like, not that you were planning on doing so anyway, but for instance, if you bid on Baratheon at the start, then that immediately cuts out a number of people.
Oh, that would radically change the draft if that happened. If somebody nominated Baratheon.
Something interesting with Night's Watch, though, and I think to some extent Martell, is...
lots of zeros, lots of twos?
Yes. So people who like the big factions are likely to avoid Night's Watch, and the other way around. So I think if you get Night's Watch, you also get a pool of players that you are alone bidding on, more or less.
Right, loyalists, yeah.
That is actually an interesting point.
And I don't think that's something that should be disregarded, because I'm almost sure Neil was targeting very comfortable Night's Watch players, for sure in Roy, and in myself. Like, he saw me play Night's Watch at Worlds. Like, he knew it was a deck that Night's Watch is a house I like. So he grabs me, he grabs Roy, he gets like all the LA guys that play Night's Watch, and he fills it in with a few other players who are comfortable with it. Like he definitely targeted the Night's Watch loyalists, and it really worked out for him. Because other people kind of just avoided those folks once they didn't have Night's Watch as their faction. Yeah.
Neil is the Moneyball regent. Yeah.
There will be an issue copying his strategy this year if he's doing what we think he's doing, like getting Night's Watch and getting the loyalists. Do we think there will be an issue getting Targ, and then
I'll tell you, like, he wanted Targ. Targ was Neil's #1 faction. But as soon as Ibri went up so high on it, he just kind of said, well, this isn't my game plan. It's not what I was trying to do. And he let it go. And Night's Watch was his kind of plan B. Obviously, it turned out to be a really nice plan B.
It might have even been his plan C. I have a feeling that
really.
Well, I'm just saying he's flexible. He's going to look. He's going to have values for these things, and he's going to, end up with something that he feels like is a bargain, and then he's going to pivot with his players. Based upon, what house he gets. So, and I think that's something similar we should try to do. I mean, I think I spotted Neil playing Greyjoy on Iron Throne today. So I think he's, I'm just saying, I think he'll be flexible where like, if something gets at the right value, he'll end up with it. I guess the thing I wanted to ask you, Sid, and just kind of, I'm not saying push back, but just wonder why you think this. You've said a number of times now you think Greyjoy will go for the most money. I don't know why you think that.
I think people have new box colored glasses on, and it's gonna draw some of these regions to bid on it. Well, some regions specifically. So let's see, where
Roy and Jesse are gonna bid it up.
Roy and Jesse are gonna bid hard on it, and no one's just gonna let them get Greyjoy for cheap. So you're gonna have Alejandro and Tom. They will bid hard on it against them.
I would love for Tom to get on Greyjoy again.
But see, like Tom, he'd be fine with it. He's probably more comfortable with it than any other faction. He'd make it work.
I know, but he will hate it, and I will love that.
He probably.
Alejandro will want Targ, won't he?
He'll want it, but he won't. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna let
someone Greyjoy for 20 or whatever.
Yeah, no, he'll bid it up. And I think Neil will too. Like we won't. I won't be willing to go into the 30s for Greyjoy, but I still think people have this real kind of hotness for them right now. It's just like it's just
this is
my sense of the meta. It's not based on data right now. It's just my sense of the meta right now.
And that
right.
So
I mean, we did do our own surveys where we got 9 responses, and Targ was overwhelmingly the favorite in that one among our people that we.
But that was, I mean, no one had played with the Greyjoy box either.
Yeah, but
so
we still don't have it. I know you got it, Buzz, but we're still waiting. But yeah, like there's still like in the people I've talked to, there's this kind of like, but the box is going to make them even better. Like they're already, most people see them as a a top half house, and then they're just like, and the box is going to make him better, and the box is going to make him better. I don't think it makes him better than Targ in the format. I don't even think it makes him better than Stark in the format. I think they're right at second, third, but I think they may go for the most.
How has Greyjoy done? Haven't they won the last 2 war formats?
They won Thronestober, right?
They won Thronestober. How was
they won the
Jesse's?
last one? Yeah. No, Jesse's was Tyrell.
Tyrell, okay.
Yeah.
Because Roy was the winning captain, and then Booker was a dick about it.
Yeah, the controversial.
Right. Now I remember.
Good times.
Good times.
Yeah, the thing is, Targ has not done great in the format. I mean, they haven't won in quite a few years. Not since the format was a very a small version of what it is now.
I find it a bit interesting. We're saying that Targ is nice because you can build essentially the same deck out of a gazillion agendas, right?
Right.
I think so. Playing against me, you should expect something unexpected.
Right.
And if I'm playing Targ, that won't be the case, or probably. There's way less innovation. Everyone knows what to expect, what to play around, and when.
Right.
So I'm just theorizing, but it could be that people know how to play against Targ because in this format it's not any different from the one we play a lot. While if you're playing Night's Watch or the 5th Martell agenda, you have no clue what you're facing.
Right. Or you have to just prepare for a lot more types of matchups.
Right.
Whereas people are like, well, you're playing Targ, be ready for the burn, watch out for probably some Sea of Blood decks, and go from there.
Yeah. So I think I don't know what I think.
Let's talk actual house bidding strategy, though. I mean,
I find it interesting that Targ, in theory, could be worse because it's all the same.
Right. I would say my evaluation of them as number one is just like who can field, 7 or 8 top level decks without even really needing to apply yourself to the task of trying to find 7 or 8. Right.
Yeah.
Like it would not be hard to do that. And that may not be enough to really make them the top faction, but I think it's a strong argument for them.
I'm not saying they're bad, because regardless what you're doing, sometimes Targ will just kill you. They're just good. I just find it interesting that it could be a thing.
It could be a thing.
Instantly, to go back to Greyjoy for a moment.
Yeah.
One trend that I feel like I've observed, and I don't have data to support me about this, but anecdotally, it's certainly something I've noticed, is that in America, significantly more than in Europe, you get a lot of talk before some of the larger events that Greyjoy are going to be the deck to play and or the deck to beat, and then they just never seem to show up as much. And it seems like America prefers to tech against Greyjoy more than they prefer to play them.
Anecdotally, I'd say that's a fair thing to say.
To that extent, is that going to potentially reduce their value in the format? In that, are people going to sort of almost unconsciously push their decks more towards being anti-Greyjoy? Or is it going to mean they go cheaper because less people are thinking about playing them?
If they are perceived as a top house, people will make sure in their deck discussions that they have a plan for the Greyjoy matchup. Because you just can't say, well, against Greyjoy, we'll lose 80% of our matches. Fine, we'll move on. That can just kill your team right there. So I think people will be teching against the perceived top houses, and they'll just kind of roll the dice against the perceived lower half. They'll just say, well, whatever Lannister plans on doing, our game plan will probably work out against it. But against Greyjoy, Targ, and Stark, they probably will have.
Against Targ, what can you actually do to tech against them?
Nothing really, right? You can
location control,
have a game plan that you communicate. Location control.
Location control can work if you can deal with Marine specifically. But otherwise, all of their good stuff tends to be the characters. It's Hizdar, Kotho, Drogon, Missandei, Drogo.
You can kind of do anti-come play stuff.
I'm 3x Begging Brother is good.
And barring, if your deck allows you to play barring, people will. But that's more like an anti-everything jumping, not just Targ.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably the primo jumpers now, I guess, other than maybe Lannister. And I guess it shuts down Skaggos and stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
The more we're talking about it, the more I want to build decks with barring.
Oh yeah.
I don't
Targ
wanna
was
play
second
against
at
that.
Jesse's name day tournament, by the way. So it's
It was second. Okay.
Who was the
Yeah, it's
regent?
hard
Do you know?
I don't.
For
Okay.
Targ?
Um,
Oh no, that was
And Martel got crushed at that tournament, which is
no, Targ
weird
was
to me.
like we said, it was controversy.
Oh,
Yelled
it was
away.
Jim Booker.
Yeah, it was Booker. It was Booker. Booker was Targ.
okay. So there are 4 distinct big guy houses, which is Greyjoy, Lannister, Stark, Tyrell. Does that lower their value by a margin because VD is suddenly, so in 50% of your matchups you're guaranteed to, well, not guaranteed, but there's higher chance you're facing big guy decks?
Yeah.
I think people are more likely to tech in against those decks because it's a valuable thing to do in more matches than it is to say tech against Neil.
Yeah. I mean, if we're not playing one of those houses, we're also taking up a slot. So out of 7 of our opponents, 4 of them will have the large majority of their decks be big guy decks.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure people think about that though.
In my experience, I think that all of those factions except Greyjoy can shrug off VD quite well.
Sure, it might be that you need VD or whatever to have a chance at all, but
I mean, like with Stark in particular, they have a few good big characters, but they don't need lots of them out at once.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they have a gazillion shots that you also can do.
Yes. Yeah, they've got really, really good low end game as well as their good high end game.
Yeah.
Well, I think I guess what I would say is I think these are interesting discussions, but ultimately, like what you guys are talking about right now is stuff that should maybe kind of go into just like what dollar values we put on these things, and that can help inform that. I think what may be actually more valuable or more actionable for Sid on draft day is going to be more, let's actually talk draft strategy here, because I think it is important to get a house early. And I think we should talk about like I personally don't think that, we want to avoid obviously Baratheon. I think probably Lannister falls in that category too. And I think a lot of what we do, especially in the first round, has got to be about getting a house that we can live with. Right. And we need to be ready for some of these big, especially like we don't know the order yet, but a lot's going to happen real quick in the first round, possibly. I mean, I hope that there's a lot of names of players called and we get to be the first house to nominate a house. I mean, the first team to nominate a house. I think that would be ideal, but I don't think we can count on that. And then once one of the big houses goes, that's going to peg the price for the others, right? In a sense, like that'll be the reference point. It's like, oh, well, I had Greyjoy as my number 1, and Stark just went for 30, so maybe Greyjoy should be 36, 38 for me or something, Yeah. And then as those houses go, people are going to start to get nervous too.
Yes.
So to that end, if you were Sid, would your first move be to try to get Targ and see if we can get Targ for like say 30 instead of 40 type?
Yes, if that's what I think that's part of what this discussion should be, is actually something like what house would we actually want to play? What's the best fit for what we actually want to do? So that's like the first thing you say when it comes to you. And if that's Targ and we get them at 30, and then great. What's going to be scary is if, Targ, Stark, and Greyjoy go off the board. I don't think this will happen, but who knows? Reaction from previous tournaments, like those go off the board, and now we're saying, crap, we now need to spend a lot of money to get either Tyrell or Martell, just to avoid, the bottom. Like, can we live with Night's Watch?
Right.
If we like maybe you guys feel like you can live with Lannister if you're going to get them for $2.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're not going to get them for $2 unless unless somebody stupidly says bear $1. Like that's.
Oh God.
Okay, you can have it.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's going to have to say that at some point, right?
So yeah, I mean, yes. So Stark, Targ, Greyjoy, we don't get those. I'm super comfortable with Martell, but I don't think they have a range. So Night's Watch and Tyrell, I'm completely fine with both of them.
Right. Okay. Really, completely fine with Night's Watch, because I'm fine with Night's Watch also. I'm very
good to know.
Playing with it, but it does create. We have to be really careful with who we pick when it comes to Night's Watch.
Yes.
Yeah. Going back to the 0s and 2s and 1s, Night's Watch had the joint second least number of people giving it a 2, and it had the second most number of people giving it a 0. So it definitely narrows the number of people you can pick.
Right.
Have you written this on the...
I can't figure out a way to do it in its own thing. I might just create a new tab to shove it in and then let you figure out how to implement it.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, create a new tab. That's fine.
If we have kind of, say we're random draft order happens and we're first, right? Or just say everyone else does a player and we're the first one to put up a faction. I think, honestly, like today, I'd probably say Stark. Because I would love to play Stark, and I think Andres would be fine playing Stark, more than fine playing Stark. I think he'd feel right at home playing Stark, and I think that's kind of like Stark is the faction I've been playing the most recently. I feel best about it, and I recognize the power of Targ, but it has been a little while. It would take me some time to get back familiar with kind of the latest Targ stuff, though I don't think their strategies changed much. And if Stark is, and if it wasn't me, if someone else put up Stark, I would jump into the bidding. And I think I'd be more fine with kind of Night's Watch than Tyrell, though I don't hate the idea of Tyrell. I'm just unconvinced completely. Unconvinced. I mean, like I said in our on Discord, I'm unconvinced that we can find that many top tier decks. You convinced me of diversity, but not necessarily of quality. And yeah, that's kind of where I am now. If the draft happens tomorrow, I would probably target Stark, Targ, then Greyjoy.
Right.
That's kind of my 3, I think.
Yeah.
If there's everything's equal and I can just put up a faction.
Just to point something out, I think Tyrell does have, and Mr. Tyrell can maybe correct me, but does have 2 that I think are actually tier 1. It's Istvan's Kings of Summer.
Yeah.
And Assault. Either Wham Assault or the one that Lances have been tinkering with, that Aaron did well with. He played Targ Assault.
Yeah.
At the Red Sat. Anyway, he's talking up that Tyrell Assault he has been playing, and it looks good.
I'd say in many ways I'm kind of maybe a bit too close to be able to comment on what's good or bad. I know what I like in Tyrell. I don't know how that will translate to people playing it and liking it in a war format.
Right.
Well, we should value, if Wama is going to help, then we can value Tyrell higher.
Definitely.
Yes.
And I mean, and just for your own, I mean, right now in terms of the numbers that we've generated for, I mean, it's significant if you're saying you feel like, Night's Watch, Tyrell, you're kind of thinking of them the same way, because we actually have, Tyrell $8 more expensive than Night's Watch
Right.
now.
I think Tyrell I still put higher because I think they give us that more flexible player pool to pull from. And I like that flexibility. And though I'm fine with Night's Watch, Tyrell, they're a more interesting prospect to me, and that just comes from that's the Jenks side speaking. That's not from any other side, but the Jenks side.
Don't you think also, like, if you're designing some decks that are going to be played by a few of the bottom quarter players or something like that, don't you feel like Tyrell can be a little bit more autopilot-y than Night's Watch for a not great player?
Definitely, like we can give some lower guys a pretty straightforward win some challenges deck, and they'll win 2 or 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is something to think about.
Oh, fuck that.
Control the set.
Yeah.
I looked at that and like, oh, that disappeared.
So yeah, I mean, just to kind of read, I think I've said this before in different ways, but when we're looking for wins in the auction, I still think like the easiest place to get wins is in buying a house, because I think people have kind of underspent on house going forward. So it makes sense to buy where people are, based upon how people have actually spent money in these previous things. It does make sense to try to buy a top 3 house, because I think it's value.
All right. So let's talk about price on those top 3 houses, right? So because like the numbers we put forward, they're higher than anything I felt paying.
Yeah.
Higher than anything I felt comfortable paying in the past. And it's going to be a challenge. Like it's going to be a challenge for me to, start typing in the number 3 when bidding on a faction, and then adding another digit there. It's gonna be painful. You guys are gonna have to be either do it, press enter, sit, bid.
40.
Honestly, I don't think it's gonna come to 40. I don't think any faction will come to 40.
No.
I don't think it's
and
something
these numbers are not predictive. These
right,
are
but
what I think that they're worth. That doesn't. But what other people pay means a lot.
Right, but I do think there's a real chance of 3 factions going in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the perceived top 3 go all for 30 or more.
And when you say that, do you see you as one of those 3 people?
Yeah. I include me. Yes, because I'm committed. I'm committed to the process here. I think it would be me. I think I think Roy would pay for the faction that he and Jesse want. I think Alejandro will pay for the faction he wants. I think some of our less experienced people will wait for the bargain, and they may end up with a faction they really don't want. My guess is that Dustin and Andres want Martel, and they think they can get it cheap, and they may be right. And that worries me a little bit. But at the same time, I think we know it's not easy to build a Martel team.
And Justin, no, Johnny, it's not gonna let Martel go, I feel.
No, he's not gonna want Vera. I think.
No.
I mean, you never know, Johnny.
I mean, he might be one of those that take the top 3, top 3 off the bat. But
there's a reason Johnny has consistently taken the final house, and we all assume that he will learn from his mistake. But I know Johnny. Like, there's a part of him. There's a very big part of him that's saying, "No, like fuck that. I'm gonna prove them all wrong. I'm gonna really prove them wrong this year." Like, there is a part of him. There's a voice that's telling him, like, this is your chance to get back to where you used to be as that bottom feeder that did well.
Yeah.
that always came in second or close. I mean, he's won a few Throne Wars, but it was when Throne Wars was very small. It was 40 players total and very small teams, and he just picked 3 guys he thought were good, and it worked out. But it's different now, and like someone's gonna end up with Bear, right? Someone's gonna be there, and I'm not convinced it's gonna be because of a mistake in bidding, but just because they want it. Like someone's might just still want it and take it.
You think somebody still might say Bear for $1?
Yes,
Or it's the last thing.
I would not be surprised, and it might be Johnny, it might not. Like you could see Roy and Jesse do it. Like I could see them doing it. I could see them doing it.
Jesse is the guy that I was thinking of when you said, "Let's do it. Let's take Barra." Okay, that's Jesse.
Yeah. He could do
Okay, so let's actually talk about that. If that happened, and we don't have a house yet, I don't think this is likely. But if they actually did say Bear for $1, then they get Bear for $1. We would immediately adjust the values of the remaining houses down.
Yeah, Lannister would then become worth $1.
That's right.
Yeah.
So everything shifts down by about $7 if that happened. That would be the kind of pivot that I'm not sure that people would understand, but would be an opportunity.
Yeah, we should we should remember that, but I don't see that happen.
I don't see it happening either.
Especially since we are looking to pick a house off the bat.
Yeah, and we're going to be willing to price enforce the top 3 pretty aggressively, too. I think, right?
Yes, except you can't bid right once you do have it. Like if we put up,
if you end up with Night's Watch, even if it's only for like $2 or whatever, then it does. Yeah, it puts the onus on making other teams bid up on other people.
Right, and other teams will have to then do the price enforcing. Like once we've got a faction,
which they may not
out of that game. They may not. Right, that's the thing. Like we could end up in this big push for the faction that we think is the best, and then maybe Targ or Greyjoy just goes for way less because people just aren't willing to bid up at that point. It's like, oh, oops, and
it'd be interesting to see if that happens. I kind of suspect that the first of the big 3 will go. And then the ones that come after might actually go from more, because it'll be the vanishing commodity of a top house.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether it's worth bidding like early on, say, Martell for $1 or Night's Watch for $1 or something like that, just to make other regions use up their money and take those slots, or you get those factions for super cheap. Like if, in the hypothetical instance where Night's Watch is worth $1, that's gonna have a drastic effect on the value of all the other factions.
Yes.
Well, here's why I think that's a bad idea.
Okay.
The reason why I think that's a bad idea is because it'd be great if you get it for $1, but in the kind of your hypothetical there, far more likely is that somebody else gets them for 3 or 4.
Yeah, but then we could go in for 5. Like we have an idea of how much they're worth, and maybe we don't mind if someone ends up getting Night's Watch for like say 8 instead of 12, if it takes them out of the bidding for the top factions on the next go round. Is my thinking.
Okay. But as long as we're happy getting Night's Watch at 5.
Right. Yeah. I think Trey's worry is that creates kind of a desperation on those top 3. Maybe when we don't want that desperation, when it's we may drive our own. I mean, if we get Night's Watch and drive that desperation for others, that can be good, but it's a risky play.
Well, yeah. If say Night's Watch goes for 5, what that might actually mean is that the top 3 go for less than we have them predicted for, right?
And that's not necessarily good for us either. If other people are getting those top 3 for cheaper.
I mean, it's all obviously this is a really stupid thing to say because it's so obvious. But if we're one of those 3, then that's a good thing. If we're not, then it's a bad thing.
True.
So it depends what the end game is. As to if we give someone else Night's Watch for cheap early, is that gonna set the prices for the others accordingly lower, or is it gonna make people bid them up higher in desperation? If we can figure out which one is more likely, we can figure out whether it's a good idea or not.
Yeah, I mean, the desperation will increase every time a house goes
A
and you
palatable
don't
house.
have one. You know, as long as Bear is still on the board and you don't have a house, we should feel it's very reasonable to feel increasing desperation to avoid them. You know, if we end up with a top 3 house, even at $30, I think we can feel really good about that, and not feel like, oh wow, we really over. I guess that's what I was saying, because there is a price we pay, right? As soon as we have a house, then we can't price enforce anymore.
Right.
You know, and so that's why having a nice, you know, top 3 house is like, it's a good compensation. We can't price enforce anymore, but we have a house that we're really happy with.
But yeah, so I guess the important thing to figure out then is it more important to try to make sure we get a house early before the desperation kicks in too much, or is it more important to give ourselves the opportunity to price enforce? Like how significantly advantageous is it to us if someone is spending, I don't know, like say 35 for Greyjoy instead of 25? And how much of a blow would it be for us to spend 35 to get Stark rather than 25? Like, is it more important to overspend and make sure we get a good faction rather than risking Barra early?
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it overspending. That's the thing, is I don't think it's overspending. I think those houses are probably worth that.
Okay, well, I mean, make it 45 versus 25, like whatever gaps, make it so that it's an overspend versus getting a bargain.
Yeah, there is that ceiling. But I think if we go early, like if we go early and just said Targ, I think there's a very good chance it gets pushed up outside of where I'm willing to pay. Let's say 38 plus. That's anything past 35. I would start to get
we're not going to be there
uncomfortable. I mean, we were at 33 last year, right? With less money. Isn't that what Ibri spent? 33 on Targ or 31?
I think it was 33.
33. But then everything else went for significantly less, right? I think once you have one kind of big expensive play, everyone kind of settles down. And then we can get maybe Stark or Greyjoy at less. I think you right away figure out who's chasing what. But quickly those top 3 can disappear.
I do think it was people had a different calculation last year. I think last year felt like Targ and everything else.
Right.
And this year feels like there's a big 3.
So, so you think, if you were to predict that, you think kind of they all could kind of go for that Targ price of last year?
I think that's a distinct possibility, but I'm making predictions here, and weird things can happen.
Right.
But well, here, let me put it this way: people should adjust to last year's auction, which was that not enough money was spent early on, and way too much money was spent on the bottom 3rd players. Right. And I think everybody came away, except for Neil, from that draft saying, wow, I wish I had spent another couple bucks and gotten, a top player that I want, instead of spending, $8 on a guy who then went, 2 and 5 for me.
Yeah.
So there should be an adjustment on that. I thought it was kind of weird that I've seen 2 of these drafts now, and everybody's, saving their money, and it's not at all clear what they're saving their money for.
Right.
I guess, are people afraid of having a feeling of powerlessness?
Yeah, I think they see that max bid number, and it scares them if it's not enough to bid on what they perceive to be some remaining good players, even if they ultimately don't need anything close to that much.
Yeah, everybody's watching the same top player they have on their list, and they're like, I got to get him for 12, and then he's going to go for 18, and now they have nothing to spend their money on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They got $12, and they're just gonna get 3 $1 players, and end up with that lost capital. Yeah.
Out of interest, in your opinion, how badly does a player have to do to be worth $1? Is like 2 and 5 a $1 player, or do you have to be 1 and 6? Or
I've tried to actually kind of game this out. I think you can, given the format, it's really hard to do worse than 2 and 5. There will be a few of them, but it's hard to do worse than that. So you don't want to pay for those first 2 wins. That said, you should be willing to pay, $1 or $2 to avoid the people that you identify as the worst players in the draft.
how
it's kind of like,
on average would you say a 3 and 4 is worth, for instance?
3 and 4, I would say, is worth. Well, in terms of what they'll be worth at the end, like what they're worth retrospectively, I think they're worth at least 5.
Okay.
But I probably wouldn't pay more than 4. 3 or 4. But when it comes to, so like if we have dummies, I think like, if dummies are out there, you can just, say $7 and that's safe. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea because, $7 says I'm going to finish in the middle of the pack, but you're not, that's a safe bet that a dummy is going to be worth like $7.
Yeah. People in the past have not bid enough on dummies.
I lost my mind in the Thronstoberfest draft.
In what way, Andreas? Just that people weren't
weren't bidding at all for the dummies. I think one might have gone for $1, and
that's crazy because the dummies they essentially they were 3.5 wins out of 7.
Yeah.
Which is better than half the field by definition.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, which is why I was saying you can pay 7 and never look back with those guys and feel just fine.
Yep.
It's the only thing that gets a person not to bid more for dummy is it's hubris. It's them thinking, well, we're gonna school this team. We're gonna train everybody up. We're all gonna be 4 wins and above. Why would I want to pay for a dummy? Like it's that's all it is. It's the only thing that makes sense. It's insane. Yeah. But teams do think that way.
But it's also that dummy guy is immune to card games.
Yeah.
He won't have a bad day. No. He won't have bad draws.
You already know.
He's going to get 3 wins for you. Yeah. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Like, the way I thought about it is that this will not be my worst player. This will be, like, a middle-of-the-range team that I'm getting for and I'm guaranteeing that there will be players that are bought for $12 that have a shit day and go 1 and 6. Like, there will be a few of those guys. And it's just like, oops. What happened to you? I spent $12 on you, but the dummy's peace of mind. You can calculate him into your win total and just say, okay, we need to make up about this many more wins. Let's get there. Let's find a way with the certain decks and with the certain players, and let's game it out, and we'll find those wins. I love the dummy. I think the dummy's great, and it makes your team a little bit smaller and a little bit tighter, and gives you more options for your decks. Like with a deck with an agenda limitation of 2, like that dummy becomes that much more valuable. That may be 1 less deck you have to field, right?
Yeah. Just for reference, in last year's Thrones War, there were only 4 1 and 6 players.
4? Is that all?
Well, let's see. I'm not counting the ones with buys, so I probably should count the ones with buys because they're truly more like 0 and 7 because you don't get scored. Right. You don't get a point for that. Yeah, never mind what I just said. There was 1 true 0 and 7 player, and then there were.
He wasn't on our team.
Oh yeah, yes he was.
He played all 7 games, and he lost all 7 games.
Yeah, and that's even one of the screwed up things about the format is like it's actually to your advantage to get those guys to drop.
Yeah,
Big time.
not even before the thing. Like that's really sinister. But like, if people take the the Aaron Glazer approach of like, well, I've been eliminated, so now I'm just going to drink. Under the format rules, I'm not sure that those will count as buys, and buys don't count
Right.
win. So it rewards being an asshole region.
Yeah.
Bring him out the day before. Let's go drink, and you throw all your drinks over your shoulder and knocking him out. Perfect.
It ends up just being Buzz and I showing up on tournament day. I don't know what
Oops.
happened.
Well, the thing is good luck
Team's
predicting
in the
your
lurch.
7 player though, because I think that you guys actually paid, or Alex paid like $8 or something. So
You say this at UK Nationals this year, there were a dozen or so of us that went out till I genuinely don't know, a very a number that's like 4 or 5 in the morning. We went out clubbing the night before the Swiss, and out of the 12 or so of us, I think 8 or 9 of us made the cut.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can power you.
Sure.
And one of those guys won the whole event.
One of my best tournaments was Fracas. I think it was 180 players or something. Made the top 16. I did not sleep a second. Passed out at the registration table. They woke me and like, let's go play. Okay. Top 16 with Bratz, Nightwatch, Lion, Choke deck. Perfect.
This is my theory, is that the more hungover you are, the more sort of like zen and focused on the bits that actually matter you are, rather than overthinking every decision.
Yeah, you're not thinking, it's all autopilot, which is perfect.
Yeah, so
And
just
you've got
pick
the
people
reps
that
that
have
way.
good autopilots and then encourage the entire event to go out drinking.
There you go.
Should we have that as something we're looking for in the draft?
we should advertise.
Autopilot.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. How well do you perform under the influence?
I've been thinking so there are some players that we definitely don't know. Or that we're unsure of. I've been thinking if one should just start messaging people on Facebook. Ask them a few questions. Whatever those questions might be.
I like that idea. Yeah, what do we want to ask them?
That's the question.
How much have you been playing? How confident in your own performance are you?
C Dang.
Yeah.
He went for like 21. He wasn't worth 21. But
nope, way overvalued.
Right. But I think he's a really good player if he's hyped. So message him. And how hyped are you for Thrones War, dude?
Right.
And depending on the answer, we'll know more. But yes, that kind of thing as well.
For what it's worth, he made the cut at 4-3 last year, and so at $21, he was not a huge bust.
Okay, I thought he didn't make it.
Wait, 4-3.
There were a few 4-3s that.
Oh, that's right. He snuck in
the cut last year.
Yeah,
and he did not win his first round. But and listen, that's not a profit at 21, but it's also not a disaster.
No, I played him. He beat me in the Swiss, and I was like, okay,
but
this is a good player. Like the way he played smart. So that's.
And he's like relatively disappeared from the scene since.
Yes, and my subjective super ranking tells that his playing frequencies in bottom and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's what he says is he's not playing that much.
Anyway,
you can learn a lot from these because people will kind of make jokes and you'll get a decent sense of them from their answers.
Yeah. No, but people on that could be bottom third or top 2/3. I think we should investigate.
I think you're right. We should start to get a list together of people we just don't have a good handle on.
Yeah.
It won't be a long list, but it's probably over 10.
Yeah. Not sure if you've seen Sid, but we'll have to redo all of the numbers. A combination of me and Ryan fucked stuff up.
Oops. I have not been on
Okay.
the sheets tonight in a while, in a few days.
Yeah.
And these numbers also aren't exactly right either until we get a final count, because they're missing the bottom.
Sure.
It's like there's a lot of people right now that are showing up as like $4 and $5 players that are going to be players, or $2 players.
The ranking, though, I'm feeling is kind of okay. It shows Schoenthal as number 1, which is like, okay, good job, Formula.
So I will say Schoenthal, it's probably not the best thing, but he does tend to struggle in the format.
Yeah,
he does. I mean, look at his past performances. It's
I
hard
looked
to
at his
why
past
because he seems to always end up playing
like,
Greyjoy.
okay, this is good.
You know who's done great in the format is Chris Vack, and you guys have him at 17.
Chris Vack has done great in the format.
Remember, it's his game frequency, I think, that's pulling him down.
We'll do final tweaks.
He's among the players that has a fucked ranking.
Okay.
Like all of these are jumbled, so we're not sure. It's actually right.
Do you think the other regions know your friend Rabs?
Aaron knows him, but he's not a regent or a hand. No, I'd say no. That said, I think they might be overvaluing him because he's a Euro. Let's bid
Who
on
traveled,
him.
so
right.
Yeah,
there's not many. Get him.
Yeah, Rabs has more occasional good tournaments rather than being someone you like expect to see at the cut of every event he plays in.
So, anecdotally, there is some stats to it. Me and him have brought the same deck together to a fair few tournaments, including Stalek. Every single time I'm in the cut or at the cusp of it, and he's like, "Oh, I had a bad day. It's 2-5."
Okay.
Yeah. But that's also putting him on buzz decks, which is unfair.
You have him in right. He's one of the people here because you have him in 2 places, and he's either the 58th best player or the 14th.
Yeah.
Probably both of those are wrong.
Yes, one of those is wrong. I think we should bid on him. We shouldn't go far. I think if he's given a deck that he likes rather than a deck that I like. So for Stalek 2017, we brought the same Targ Crossing. I played first Snow and Duel and just missed the cut. And he no, I don't want to play without Valor. And that deck shouldn't run Valor. He ran Valor. He wants Valor. So he got trashed.
I mean, one thing to think, Sid, is just one thing in your head is I was thinking it might make sense to kind of do a anti-celebrity strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that those are just the most prominent people are most likely to be overbid. And
people like them, and so they bid on them,
mm-hmm.
which is fine. I'm all for not bidding on Barber.
Yeah, I love him as a human, but he's not a good teammate.
Yeah,
he's not a good.
I don't love him as a human.
I guess because I've known him forever.
Sure, yeah.
You just need to beat him enough, and then he'll respect
you.
Yeah,
you need to show him who's the alpha, I guess.
Which isn't hard. Yeah, it's not hard to beat. You just need to play him. No, but I think you're right. It's the picking up the Pablos, the Matthew Woodards, the Justin Smiths, the Alex Espositos, the Steffens and the Yotams. Like that's where we're gonna keep this team like above water. Like that's actually where, if we win this thing, that's where we'll win it. We'll be in those players. It's not gonna be with, bidding through the roof for Chris Schoenthal. Not that I won't bid on him, I will bid on him.
Yeah.
But like that's not where the tournament will be won.
Sure. So we're how many? 15 players? Let's say we're maxed out at 120 players. We're 15 players, right?
Yeah.
And then average is 3.5. So let's say I am the best player and I become King of Swiss. That's still only 7 out of 52.5 wins.
Right.
It's a lot of wins, but still.
You got to find a lot more.
Yeah.
Other places. Yeah.
By the way, just because I bothered to look it up and I want to say it, with Rabs on Jousting Pavilion, which obviously isn't always the best indicator, but is also not an insignificant one. He's got 23 tournament entries. He's won one of those 23 tournaments, and his overall win rate's 55%.
That's
Just to give you a rough.
James, go check mine.
Where are you? That's players.
I was just identifying this as a player where our team might actually just know the situation better. So
Yes.
Good to know. He's more likely to be over.
I know.
Because
I
he's
think
in
I know
Europe.
exactly when we stop bidding.
Yeah.
But we
You know
should,
the true
we should
Rabs.
probably bid for him, but not.
Your win record, Buzz, is 63%.
Oh, really? I thought it was
Yeah.
negative.
Nope.
Like the Paris one wasn't on. I don't attend a lot of tournaments, so.
You've got 17 entries against this name. Again, just the one win, but 114 games total, and you've won or got a mod win on 72 out of 114.
Because there's a lot of store champs and game kits and stuff, and they're atrocious. And my tournament wins. Oh, so you said there was one there, yeah, but
yes,
the rest of them.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's about the level we're talking, is above average, but not by too much.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I mean, the
what
Swiss
else?
system will push you towards 50%. Pretty strong. So a 59% win rate is still really good.
But like, if to use one of the very best players in the world as a comparison point, Hanno is a 72% win record.
Yeah.
So he's certainly nowhere close to that sort of level. While still, yeah, he's not a bad pickup, but you don't want to overspend. You don't want to spend more than a standard American perfectly reasonable player.
Wins. How do you is the plan, Sid, just that as a regent, are you in voice communication with Ryan and them, or is it all just punching numbers into
Yeah, we're all on a call.
Are people talking though?
Yes.
At least in
the last year, right, Roy and I were doing commentary, but Ryan said they were all on an actual voice call.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you want to communicate with the rest of this team?
Yeah, I was thinking we sit on that call with our mics muted and sit on Discord here and talk live. That was my.
I like it.
Would they allow it?
Of course. I mean, we can unmute if we need to talk to them.
No, it means like Ryan may not let hands on the call.
Oh, right. Oh, I think.
Or
so.
he might allow hands in that.
Yeah, I don't think like he won't allow you on there. I think,
Yeah, that
or
was
he
my
won't
point.
want. But I mean, we'll want to talk openly all the time, and we can't do that if
Right.
we're talking out in the ether.
And it'll be very difficult for me to carry on 2 calls at once.
Right, which is why I'm saying we're both on both calls. Maybe I'm more on this one and Sid is more on that one. But
Right.
I can't see what interesting thing you could have to say on that call, while we have a lot of interesting things to talk about here.
Right. No, nothing interesting. It'll just be Ryan saying things like, all right, you're up, but
yeah,
I'll know that because I'll be able to see that I'm up. And you'll have, I think Ryan's going to be playing like the auctioneer. He puts in the countdown into the chat so that there's, an actual, something we can track that's not just his voice. But yeah, he's mostly just narrating the draft.
Yeah.
And, calling for a break here and a break there so that the regions between that and the kind of chat box that they're working with for bids on top of things.
I can even see me having all that muted and just checking the chat log and talking here.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be enough. I don't even think I would need to speak in that group. If I just said, hey, I'll be following along with the chat and I'll be able to listen if you want to, ask me a question or something. But I'll be talking with my group most of the time.
Yeah.
That may be okay.
I'm also willing to drive to Oxnard, if that would help.
Ooh, yeah.
Nice.
I like it. So you can like literally grab my hand as I'm about to hit. You know what? I'm gonna just make this pitch. No,
I'm gonna. I have a little keyboard cover where I can just a box that I drop on top of the mouse.
I like it. All right. So yeah, we do. You know more about how to set that up properly than me, Buzz. So you're gonna have to help me as we get closer, and we'll talk to Ryan and figure out how, because he hasn't really addressed how that's gonna work with hands now, and how involved they're allowed to be.
Do you have multiple monitors?
I do not.
Do you have a TV?
Yeah. I could throw together some
Hog it
screens
for hours.
Yeah. I can put some screens together.
Definitely my recommendation. To separate so you don't have to tab between different things. So you have everything accessible at all times. I think I've 5 monitors if I need.
Oh my god.
But I only have 2 connected. But that's, I mean,
I can definitely get
2 up from 1 is insanely valuable.
I actually have a closet of old monitors in my classroom. I'll probably just grab 1 or 2 and bring them.
Yeah, cool.
For the weekend, yeah.
On the live draft sheet, I have written down some questions that we'll want to have answered before the 6th, and that I can toy around with in the spreadsheets during the break.
Where are those at?
Live draft sheet, top left, A and B 2 to 4.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We should add more questions. Just figuring out, for example, what house do we nominate? We are nominating one of the 8 first auctions, and we should know what do we put up Stark or Targ? That's a big difference. Could be.
Yeah, it definitely could be.
Because if we're getting either for cheap, we know which one we'd rather have, probably. If someone stops, no, we should. But I mean, we should know.
We should know. You're right.
If everyone else stopped bidding, maybe we're stuck with our second choice if we put up the second choice. We can't just, okay, no, we'd rather have that other one. We don't that now.
Right. No. So when do we draft what, right? We want faction early and...
But, okay, that question is more on the when do we put up Stefan?
Got it. Yeah.
But those kind of questions, I'd be interested to have more. But then also, like, question that can be solved by adding more info here or improving on it. How do we know if a certain person is good for our current house, which I have fixed in the D&E column.
Right.
That's a question that we had, and now we have an answer.
So we need... what other questions are going to be important to know, to have a plan, to have an answer for on draft day?
What happens if we don't get top 3s?
Right.
That's a good question.
Well, it sounds like, though, that you guys still have quite a bit of flexibility. Like, you'd be fine with Tyrell or Night's Watch or Martell. It's...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we can make all that work. It's just a question of
three.
the number.
Yeah, it's those middle three with, I think, the bargain we assume we'd be getting along with them. Is a comfortable place.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it ideal. It's not ideal. I still would rather have a top 3.
Yeah,
but it's a comfortable
and
place.
there's a very good chance they won't be bargains, but
yes.
Yeah.
And how do you value and evaluate a top 3, an expensive top 3 versus a bargain on a top 5?
That's the hard part, right? Like, if you can get Tyrell for 12.
That's why we do dollar values, though.
Right. Like, if someone here's a question: do we even bother to jump in on the bidding? Like, if someone just goes Tyrell $1, like, what's our reaction to that in the first round? We're not even trying to take a piece, or are we bringing Tyrell up to a place?
Tyrell for $1. I think they're significantly better than that.
Oh, yeah. Right. But that's where they'll start, right? So do we jump into that? I think we do.
Yes.
To a certain level, right?
Absolutely.
And it'll be where we've evaluated that, and no further. Especially if our top 3 houses are still around.
I think it's slightly lower than where we've evaluated them at, assuming that in that hypothetical that Greyjoy, Stark, and Targ are still on the table. I think you probably don't mind someone getting Tyrell as a bargain to the value of like $1 or $2.
It bothers me deeply.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a nice feeling, but you don't want to pay exactly on dollar value for Tyrell and take yourself out of being able to get any of the better factions.
No, but we should have maybe one of the things to do on this is to actually come up with right now, this is what I think the houses are worth. And I'd start a second column of what I think is more realistic about what they might go for. And then the third column would be, and we should be willing to price enforce a house to this. Like, I would think right now we could go in and know we price enforce Tyrell to 13 or 14 and not feel too bad about it. You know, if we got it at 13.
If you're price enforcing, it needs to be up to a value where you're fine if the bidding stops.
That's right.
Right.
And would you guys be upset if we got Tyrell at 13?
I mean, I wouldn't, certainly.
I wouldn't be upset. No. I would feel like we still got value there. Yeah. And maybe even more value than getting, target 35. In fact, I'm pretty confident saying that is more value if we save that much money. Yeah.
Yeah. It is just the thing to remember is that we are playing a game of musical chairs in which two of the chairs are bombs. You know, and one's a
Sure.
so you are happy just to get a seat, especially if you feel like you got a deal on. So if that happened with us on Tyrell, you know, that would be absolutely fine.
Yep.
Out of interest, Trey, this might be something that is either a question you've already figured out the answer to, or it might be too complicated to be able to answer that easily. But would the value, like the relative value of the factions, drop the fewer players we have in the draft?
Yes, definitely.
Like, not just in terms of, oh, this was, 35, now we're going to drop it down to 32 or whatever. But at that point, assuming the budget remains the same, it does like a significant chunk more. Like, say the difference is, I know it's not, but say the difference is between having teams of 15 versus having teams of 10. At that point, is there a significantly larger percentage of the budget that should go on those first 5 players you draft?
Yes. Well, right. I mean, it is the case that the budget changes. I think we also are factoring in that the larger the team gets, the more that faction matters, not just because of the numbers of players, but the good houses can produce more good decks and the bad houses have so few that they can do. And then in addition to that, generally when we're talking about adding more players to the player pool from what we have, they're mostly added at the bottom, I think. I think that like if with Ryan, like the players we're going to get now, what players we do get, I think are likely to be worse than average. Aren't our best players already kind of in? Like there might be a couple of Wausau guys who decide to.
For the most part, I would agree. From this point, if he is really under capacity, he'll start reaching out to people who haven't played in a while. People who are in local play nights, but maybe aren't really into the big tournaments. But he'll convince them it'll be a great time. It'll be at a bar. You'll have it'll be fun. We'll take care of you, and they'll be like, okay, I'll come play. And yeah,
when you have money to, I mean, I guess this to answer your question, James, I think is what you're asking. When you have money to allocate, it's almost always correct to kind of allocate it. And you can kind of always cheat on the bottom too. And part of the math, and I'm not a statistician at all, but part of this math is based upon don't pay for what you don't have to pay for. So like you don't pay really for your first couple of wins, or certainly not your first win. Like that's a given. Like you don't want to have any values based just on how many wins. But yeah, the bigger the team sizes, definitely the bigger the top players would be. And that's why this whole thing with the hands is like those values are already locked in. So as the player pool shrinks, those guys actually start to get a little bit more accurately priced. Whereas right now, I think the hands are kind of at a pretty substantial discount right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember also, like with the hand system, Ryan just pulled out 8 of the best players from the player pool too. Mm-hmm. So there is going to be scarcity, or at least if the first round of the draft is really already had happened at a pretty conservative. It won't be as conservative if we're only running teams of 12 or 13 instead of 15.
Right. Those evaluations based on full 15-player teams, right? And they weren't really based on anything other than what would I pay for that person right now in my head, without ever having played a Throne Tour of this size, right? Those evaluations were very arbitrary. In that Ryan was just like, put them at a price. If I think it's a crazy price, I'm gonna text you and tell you need to adjust your price. He didn't adjust anyone's, so I think we were all pretty close. And because we were all close, even if we were all wrong, right? It's what got accepted. So that's where we're at. I hope I got Andreas at a good bargain.
It's the
I hope
exact same price as last year, right?
Yeah, I basically just last year and was like, all right, like, would I spend $21 on Andreas? Yes, I would. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I did.
What's the Q column on house value 2019?
Hold on 1 second. Lost my tab. What is the Q column? Oh, that was just my.
Enforced?
This is actually isn't projected. This is, I think, actually value. And then I thought this was closer to a prediction.
And then you want to have an enforce.
Okay,
Yeah,
I misinterpreted it then. In that case, we can disregard my comment on the Lannister one.
Right.
What was your comment on Lannister? Oh, you mouse over.
The 8 was too high.
Oh, yeah. Well, the math
One.
is kind of. Oh, as far as the prediction, well, let me put it this way: what's going to happen if there's only if it's Lannister and Bera and they're the last two houses? How much would you be willing to pay for Lannister? It's entirely possible that Lannister will go for a lot. It could happen, and if we were in that situation, you know, I would probably say keep spending until we can't spend anymore to avoid Bera.
I don't think Lannister's that much better than Barra, though. Like, isn't that sort of the point of the value?
No,
that if we
sure,
even if like the alternative is getting Barra for 1, that if you spend more than 9 on Lannister, then by our calculations you've overspent on Lannister and you should have taken Barra for 1.
Maybe, I guess the thing I would say is that at that point in the draft, you probably don't have better ways to spend your money, and you want to buy the most value you can with.
I mean, it depends, because theoretically this could happen in the last round of the draft, or it could happen in the first round of the draft. That the first 6 things that go are the other 6 factions, and then the 7th thing nominated is Lannister.
It could be everyone goes faction early. It could happen this year. If there's ever a year for it to happen, it should happen this year.
Yeah, a year where there are certain factions you really want to avoid, and where you've got a good player for free guaranteed.
Yeah.
I take your point, and I think we did get a lot of survey responses. People consistently rated Bera the worst house. It's just a question of how much worse.
Yeah.
And at a difference of $8, that's essentially saying only saying essentially 3 games worse on a 15-person team. So that's still that's relatively insignificant. These values could be a lot more. It's just that because they won't be. Like right now, just you guys maybe try to understand the values I've assigned to these.
Yeah, the P
this
column?
Is saying. Well, the actual how I came up with $41 here versus 1 for Bera.
This is column O we're talking about, right?
Yeah, column O. This is me saying that Bera, I'm sorry, that Targ will essentially add half a win per player per team over the course of their 7 games. So your 3.5 win player becomes a 4 win player with Bera. Now we got survey responses that people thought that playing the best house could up their performance a game and a half, whereas I actually just capped it at half a game. And this is Bera being, if you were normally a completely average player, you drop to a 3 and 4 player. With 15 players per team, it just adds up really quickly. So it's not actually as extreme as it might be, and that's why with Thrones War last year, Stark really was that bad, and Stark and a buck was in a sense kind of overpaying for them by 20 $25, if not more. Like that team never had a chance. That's how bad Stark was.
It was actually a negative 20 house. But he needed to be spotted money once they
Right.
hit up with Stark.
And it's just a question of like with that kind of being the case, like Bear is definitely like a negative, but how do all the other houses adjust to that? And listen, and it doesn't help us win a tournament that one team is going to get flushed with Barra, right? Like we're still competing against the other team. So this is the reason why you still want to be conservative about your top picks. Is that it doesn't matter if, a couple of teams, are out of it before they even start. That's not who you're competing against.
Right.
So it is all relative.
I guess for me, the point of the enforcing values column is if this faction gets put up and we haven't selected our faction yet, what do we bid up to? And I wouldn't want to bid higher than one for Lannister if we don't have to.
I wouldn't say a single dollar on Lannister. I mean, I think it's okay to put it enforced to 0 on Lanny. I don't think we want either of those houses.
But then, yeah, so like, for example, with Night's Watch, if we think that it's going to go for 12, how, like, if someone nominated it for a $1 round, we wouldn't want to bid 12 because we probably wouldn't be too thrilled if we had to spend that much to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But we also wouldn't want them to get it for $1. So where do we land in the middle? Like, do we have a formula to figure this out, or are we just going to sort of
like $2 less or
80%?
like, is it going to be a percentage?
Yeah, I think we do eyeball it. I don't $2 less. I think it's more like this kind of thing.
It's like with Night's Watch, based on that 6. So we're saying if we got Night's Watch for 6, we'd be happy with that, but we wouldn't be happy if we got Night's Watch for 7. And we also wouldn't mind too much if someone else got Night's Watch for 7, but we'd be sad if they got it for 6. That's what enforced to 6 means to me, at least.
Yeah, but it's incremental. I don't think we should be sweating $1.
Oh, sure. Like, especially not in the first round.
Right.
But I mean, I use Night's Watch as an example. We could just as easily be talking with Greyjoy. Are we happy to give, we're happy if someone else gets Greyjoy for 29, and we're not happy if we do, but we're not happy if someone else gets them for 28.
Well,
I think the main thing in price enforcing is making sure that major steals don't happen. And if we enforce to our level, then we have the opportunity to have a major steal happen for us, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want, is that if you actually end up price enforcing and getting it, if you're not happy about that, then you did it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Buzz enforced.
And maybe this is something for Sid to look at and
yeah, I'm looking at him right now, thinking I'm just trying to internalize some of these numbers and think, all right, like Night's Watch. The prediction of 12 I like. I might even, because it's Night's Watch and because I'd be okay playing with it and because they do well in this format, like I might enforce right up to 11 or 12. Almost like I'd be willing to pay the prediction on Night's Watch because I think they represent a very solid get at prediction. But I'd be happy to see them go for anything over our prediction to someone else.
Okay. So let's change that. Use that column Q to put what you actually feel comfortable doing.
Yeah. Those predictions, out of interest, are they just like plain and simple guesses on our part, or do we have data?
And we can change those.
Well, the prediction. Yeah, prediction is. Yeah, the P column is. Yeah. O isn't a prediction, but P is.
Okay. So how
But
come
they're
Targ
correct.
significantly lower in prediction than
And why is
relative to its
Stark
value
above
compared to
its value?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to change those. That was actually something that our consensus that you guys would rather have than Targ, and it seemed like you were willing to go further on Stark than Targ.
Okay.
And
I'm not
Phil,
sure that's
please.
the case, but
Yeah, I'm
then-
not sure I'd
then
go
change it.
further. I might just go first. Like I like Stark as a faction to kind of, even if we don't win it, to get it up there to kind of set a baseline. Like I would like to see something like Stark setting the market. I would not like to see something like Night's Watch setting the market.
Mm-hmm.
how
I'm not standing by those numbers in the column P at all. Those were things I just
No.
jotted down during our
but,
conversation.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can fill here.
So for Stark, I'm just looking at the list of decks that we've got there.
Oh yeah.
There seems to be a large drop off between the top deck and the second deck. This is my one concern with Stark. This is a completely different subject of conversation. I apologize for that. They're just talking about how we might even be happy to go higher on Stark than Targ. Are we going to have enough good decks that people can play from Stark?
If we have to
Let's
go
see.
like 7,
For Stark, I have noted Filthy Lion, only because we'll go.
Yeah.
Sea of Blood, Crossing, Faith, Reigns, Cohor.
Yeah. So
Uh,
across those 7 decks, you've got a projected 28 wins and 21 losses. Whereas for Tyrell and Martel, both of them have 27 wins and 22 losses.
Yes.
Which-
Just
so
remember, this is me on 15 minutes just smashing in stuff.
And I even screwed with
maybe
these.
we want
I
to change
screwed
those
with
values.
these.
But if we,
Yes.
like, for the sake of argument, if we take those values as being correct, why is Stark going for literally as much in our predictions as Tyrell and Martel combined? If, with assuming an average set of players, it only gets you one.
Well, I can tell you, for one thing, like the numbers on our house value page are not based upon Buzz's win-loss.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm just
all.
saying possibly we should look to synchronize them a bit more.
yeah, I agree.
The
This is more
faction
based
theories
upon-
tab needs more love if we're going to do.
But am I right in you're saying that you think that this is actually reflecting a problem with Stark, in that like Buzz's numbers might actually be correct, in that there's not a lot of depth there?
That these values that we've got on the house value tab, those are driven by the projected win rates of each faction. Is that correct?
They are based upon the survey responses.
Oh, the survey responses
Yeah.
specific.
So
Where we ranked them,
Targ
and then
as the
how much
highest, Stark
better.
as the second, Greyjoy as the third, etc.
And then we even did a thing of like, compared to an average house, how do you view this thing? And that's how we came up with the ranking. That's what you're looking at kind of in columns, C through J, rows 26 through 30.
26.
These are all of the survey responses
Mhm.
combined.
Annoyingly, the Annals of Castle Black is down right now, but I'd really like to see, like, if we could get a grasp on the QRs of the various different agendas, because my concern with Stark is that they, in terms of successful decks of late, with the obvious exception of Wilco winning from nowhere with Stark Lion, they're very much a one agenda faction. And that I don't know if our value setup is properly accommodating for that.
Yeah, that's something we've been discussing and trying to figure out. Like, so we have Tyrell at, maybe they don't have a 5-2 deck, but they have a super wide range. And the reason we're not interested in Martell, maybe Martell Wolf is the best deck in the world, but they only have that and Worse to Come, and then it gets sketchy. And while a Night's Watch can just play 15 builder decks if they really want to. But yeah, that's definitely a concern for me with Stark. I'd be super happy to play Lion or Fealty.
Me too.
I'm very interested in those decks. I think they're amazing. I was very close to bringing Stark Fealty, the one we took your deck and changed it a little bit.
Validity and things.
And like, I think
and
crossing
it looks so fun to play.
And that's the one that Jakob arguably could have won the whole tournament.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he just fucked up.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Stark was dead last in Thronestoberfest too. So
when was this? That's so weird.
That was mid-October.
What?
That's right.
Yep.
So there's probably something there. I think he's identifying something.
Yeah.
Well, that was also John Palmer's draft.
Oh yeah, John Palmer's draft sucked. Yeah, now I remember. Yeah,
Okay.
he drafted atrocious players, like really
Atrocious
bad
players.
Yes,
He drafted his buddies.
people he knew from the L5R community, and not the new one, the old CCG one. And he said, "Okay, these are good card players, but they knew nothing about Thrones."
Yeah.
That was his strategy, and it was not a very good strategy. But on the other hand, just to devil's advocate a little bit, can't Stark just play the Fealty deck out of no agenda and blah blah blah? The Fealty is great. It adds so much consistency. But how much worse is it if you play no agenda or whatever?
I mean, that's a fair point.
Or Reigns, or
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. That, like, I found that with the Tyrell Wars that I won Euros with, that like that deck came about because in London we were doing like a little faction league thing where there were 3 of us for each of the 8 factions, and then every week your 3 had to play the 3 of another faction. And it was, you know, the most points wins, but you got points for wins. But one of the other things you got points for was each new agenda you used. And we thought it would be fun as Team Tyrell to use every single agenda option, because there was exactly enough agenda options in the field at the time that we could have a different one for every single game and use up every single one. And I basically played near enough the same list out of Tyrell Wars, Tyrell Fealty, Tyrell Banner of the Rose, Tyrell Greensight, Tyrell No Agenda.
Yeah.
And of my 7 decks, 5 of them basically the same deck with a different agenda. And Wars was the optimal agenda for that. But it, you know, Tyrell Banner Rose and Tyrell No Agenda worked perfectly well with that set of cards. And I do see the argument that Stark Fealty, like, that's a great deck, but the Fealty is maybe the best choice of agenda for that deck, but it's not the only choice of agenda.
Yeah,
right.
And I think not the agenda, by pretty much by nature of it being Fealty, it's not the agenda that makes that deck good. Whereas Lion, you probably couldn't replicate as well out of another agenda, because Harrenhal tricks with the Boltons is part of the point of the deck.
Yeah. So on the other hand, though, Stark Fealty, Fealty out of Tyrell and Fealty out of Stark, I think Stark uses Fealty as a more important crutch than Tyrell does. They need that economic consistency, maybe. While Tyrell is like, lul, Fealty, I have Arbor.
I mean, I guess it depends on the Stark, it depends on the Tyrell. But I think Stark has a lot of loyal cards that every single round it can use that agenda, definitely. Whereas Tyrell has a few, but a lot of the better Tyrell cards are non-loyal.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it would, as you say, that Stark Fealty deck would suffer more from changing the agenda than the Tyrell Wars suffered from changing the agenda. But at the same time, it wouldn't suffer as much as the Stark Lion would from changing the agenda, or the Martell Wolf would from changing the agenda. So that might actually be a worthy consideration before the draft for each faction. If we look at if they have like a top deck, how many different agendas can that deck more or less play the same as and maybe only lose one win across the course of the game? So like if Stark Fealty is 6-1, is Stark no agenda but basically playing the same list? Is that a 5-2 or a 4-3? Or like how much does losing the agenda impact it? And if it doesn't impact it more than 4-3, then Stark no agenda should be one of those 7 decks for Starks, and that pushes their value up.
Right. It replaces Cahor or Reigns or Faith or something else that you're just shoving in there for no reason.
Yeah. And like for Lannister, Crossing is comfortably their best deck. Can you play essentially the same deck but without the extra power you get from Crossing? Does that make the deck significantly worse, or does it only make the deck slightly worse? Because obviously you'd never in a real tournament play Lanny no agenda but built as a Crossing rush, because you wouldn't use Crossing. But if you can't use Crossing, is that deck going to be one of their 7 best decks?
No agenda is completely valid, right? That is one of the options.
Yeah.
Well, according to the rules right now, yes. But I assume so, of course.
I mean, according to the rules, right? No agenda does not count as an agenda, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Theoretically,
Wait. Could we bring 15 Stark no agenda?
Yeah, you could go Stark Fealty, and all the rest Stark no agenda. I think.
Oh, please, 2 Stark Banner Wolf for the fun.
Oh, that's true. You're
sure.
Two Stark Banner Wolves as well.
That's a thing too.
I think we should talk to Ryan and
I mean, at that point, you're really just developing one deck, and you've got the whole team tuning a deck. That's a big advantage.
Yes,
that would be an interesting question.
I'll ask Ryan. Right.
I don't think any other team would do that. I mean, it's possible that someone would think of that, but people love their agendas, man. And it may be that Stark is the only real faction that could do that.
I think possibly Tyrell could as well.
Yeah.
Basically, any faction where their best deck doesn't require a specific agenda,
right?
I think you can more or less do it with. I think we've got enough agendas that are broadly inoffensive now. It's like with that Stark one. Buzz, you might actually be able to remember this better than me because I'm drawing a blank. The Stark Fealty that we've been playing, does it have any winter plots, for instance?
Yes, one.
Which one?
Well, you do, and Jacob doesn't. It's the wolf thingy.
Oh, wolf
plot. Yeah.
So yeah, I think, for example, you could also add Stark Summer to the list of ways of playing that Stark deck, and then the Time of Plenty and Close Call rounds are better, and you lose out on the Wolf Tutor, but that's one of like 10 different plots that are good in that deck anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob, Team Sweden, and we had like 5 or 6 people on the deck. All ran
and you cut
it. Without the winter plot and with VD instead.
Yeah. So that might be something to take into account on this faction theories page. If we can figure out how much worse like the Stark deck gets from losing Fealty, can we just cheese it? The other thing, I guess, is you probably need buy-in from the team in that.
Right.
And you also need players that don't mind not getting the Fealty version. Like you don't want to call the team.
I want to play the green side version.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure some people will relish getting to play the dumb agenda version. Right. There might be people that feel embittered by like, oh, why don't you want to give me the fealty? I could be good with that.
But that's the Thrones War format anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Alex, my regent last year, was very good about this. He said right off the bat that, okay, I'm gonna put Buzz on our best deck. I'm gonna put him and X and Y if they want to, and I'm gonna put you on this deck, and we're gonna build a deck for you, etc. And was very clear so that there weren't any hard feelings 2 weeks up before the tournaments, and like, you're playing our worst deck. Good luck, fuck you. But instead, for our worst players, he not only said that you're gonna play a worse deck, but also we're gonna help you build a deck that works for you.
Yeah, that said, though, you know, we did have that 0-7 because we did have a player who ignored that shit.
Yeah, I mean,
and we don't know how my friend Paul would have done because he was going to run his weird wildling thing.
But I think, regardless of how anyone was doing, and that guy that went 0-7, he didn't say a word in any of our chats until the day of. So, he still, disregarding doing well or whatever, he was very good about it in a friendly, I mean, team kind of way. Making people feel good about it, not only this is the best for the team. But I mean, he did what he thought was best for the team, but made sure that everyone knew why he did what, etc.
No, Alex was a great regent, and he'd be a good player to grab too.
Yes.
Yes, he would.
Yeah, I played the deck Alex played, so he didn't put himself on the best deck. So
right. I mean, yeah, depending on who we get, like I don't plan on putting myself on the best deck unless we really go like a real kind of mid-range group of players. Like I'm targeting someone. I'm hoping to target someone in the draft that'll be like Buzz and them will be kind of our top two, our heavy hitters, and I'll be that tier below where I'm more comfortable.
Or
where
2 or 3 tiers below.
Yeah, as low as it needs to be. I feel like I'm doing just fine.
I mean, if you're putting yourself on tier 5, then you've been having a really good draft.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and that's how I was with Lannister too. In at Jesse's tournament, I was like, well, Alejandro's going to get our best deck, crossing, and I was like, I could take the other one, or I could give it to someone who I think is just as good as me, but maybe would benefit a little bit more because they don't play very often. You know, like you can kind of split hairs there and get those decks in the hands of people who you think it's, you know, they might get one less win than me, but if I gave them something not as good, like they could cause three wins less with some other deck that they're not prepared to handle. But those are conversations for once we actually have a team.
How are we gonna go about figuring out this with Stark Fealty and and
we gotta
factions?
find out what Ryan thinks about No Agenda.
I wrote to him now. I wrote to him now.
Okay.
But I mean, for valuing the houses, we should figure out, as Wama said, how much worse is Greensight than Fealty or No Agenda or Banner Wolf, and how much worse is Crossing, etc. for Lannister. But also, how do we go about fixing these numbers so that they might actually be correct?
When you say these numbers, which
These
ones do you mean?
Crossing is at
Faction
6-1.
series, right?
It's obviously wrong. I just put it at 6-1 to signify this is a tier A, tier 1, or maybe a tier S deck.
Right.
It's not the real stat. Maybe is 4.5.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of these tables on the the faction theories page will need updating. Like, for instance, earlier we called Tyrell Summer potentially a tier 1 deck, and it's here as a 3/4 deck.
Yeah.
And like for Night's Watch, we've got Kings of Summer on a 5/2, Wars to Come on a 4/3, Red Door on a 4/3. When I don't like, I think Kings of Summer is a better agenda for builders than the other two are, but I don't know if it's an entire win on average per player better.
Right. Probably not.
I don't think you need to worry about screwing up our spreadsheets. I think when you see that kind of thing, please make that change.
I mean, that's the sort of change that should be made either collaboratively or by Buzz and Sid, right? Because they're the ones whose opinions on how good these decks are matter.
No. I mean, the opinion on what to draft. I mean, we should collectively figure out a rank for all of these. Like which faction is the best. Then we might maybe you say Greyjoy is the best, and we're like, nope, not gonna play that. But still, the ranking process, it's definitely collectively, especially since how do I rank Greyjoy? I don't know. I've literally not touched the Greyjoy cards. I think I built a Banner Kraken once, but they're in a pile somewhere.
That's very fair.
I don't know.
Okay. Should we maybe, like, I still feel like possibly those tables, like, we should have some sort of protection over them rather than just any of us just being able to fiddle around based on whatever crackpot theory we've just come up with. That maybe we should, at the very least, like, have our own separate tables and then have, like, the top evaluated decks go over there, like maybe on average. Like, if you have a strong feeling about a certain deck of like, oh, I think Kings of Summer for Night's Watch is worth 5/2, and no one else has mentioned it, then your 5/2 is taken. But if you've said it's worth 5/2 and I've said it's worth 4/3, then it would go in that main table as being worth 4.5, 3.5, or not that, because that wouldn't add up. 4.5, 2.5. I don't know.
You could just do a comment if you want to, if you're hesitant to change it. You know, in the end, I think like we want to make sure that we're not actually just wasting our time here, because I think this is pretty marginal changes. Like, yeah, you want to move Summer up, but until we have House Tyrell, like actually breaking down the factions too much, you know, like we're really just talking about shifting things a buck or two here. Somewhat. I mean, I think this is all good insight, but I also feel like we can go down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I do think trying to figure out if Stark is actually worth nominating first, and if Night's Watch is $3 better than Tyrell, or if it's $10 better, is of interest.
Okay.
I have infinite. Well, as many hours that there are in a day, I have until the draft, literally, to spend on this.
You're saying your rabbit hole goes
I'm dicking
deep,
around
is what you're
all
saying.
until after New Year's. Well, I'm going away for 2 days now, but that's it.
Fair.
And fiddling with spreadsheets is what I do at work as well. I love this kind of stuff.
So if we devote, let's say, X amount of days to getting these charts as accurate as we think we can get them, it's probably worth it in that it'll help us kind of really maybe adjust our faction rank, right? That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And if we do get a more clear faction rank, I think that's worth it because I think our faction rank is probably the most important thing.
I think so. I don't think maybe we flip Tyrell and Night's Watch. Maybe we flip Lanny and Martell, but I don't think we're gonna bump the top 3. And
you don't think like Stark could leap Targ, or you say Stark?
I don't think maybe. Sure, they can flip between themselves, but I don't think anyone is gonna bump up into the top 3. I mean,
Like our tiers are probably safe.
Yes, but I do think it's super interesting to see how much of a percentage of the top one it is. It's hard to explain in English, but yeah. And my big issue that I didn't even think about because everything is automated anyway. I put 6.1 instead of putting 4.5. I was too hesitant to use comma or what periods.
Decimals,
yes. That is something we shouldn't be. So,
I mean, yeah, we don't have to be whole numbers.
My columns are automated anyway. It doesn't care about decimals.
Right.
My one quick question: do we know how many agendas we need? Is it likely to be 7 at this point, or is it going to be 8, or could it even be 6?
Sure. Let's.
It could even be 6 if it doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Yeah. If enrollment just doesn't come through.
It's probably 7.
How many do we need to bump it to 8? No, to 6.
8 would be the full.
Full
8 is full, yes. But how
Right.
many do we need to bump from 7 to 6? 6
would be
times
12.
No.
I mean, be a 12-person team.
It's at
6 would be
96,
12.
right? So 95 is 5 players, and there is a dummy to be had. Yeah.
So we've got, and the other question is, the 7th agenda. Is there a chance that only one person has to play that?
Yes, there's a chance.
Yes, there's a good chance.
And so, should we be like, for the sake of, I'm trying to do some calculations. What is the default number of players I should assume a team is likely to have based on current projections? Like, are we expecting a 13-player team or a 14? Or I know obviously that's a tough question to answer without knowing the exact number of signups, but
11 or 12?
including Random
Way
Region.
more than that.
Oh no, plus
14.
2.
So
yeah,
13,
14.
I didn't
Okay.
count me and
for the time
14.
being, I'll assume 14-player teams for doing calculations, and then we can work from that.
Yeah, I would say
Excel or...
the most likely scenario is 7 agendas.
Yeah, for now, Buzz, I'm doing it in Excel.
Being an outside
And then,
chance.
Puke. I wanna follow.
It's right now. My gist is I'm going to try and figure out a win rate for the top 7 agendas for each faction, and then from that, because I assume that the number we'll come up with will be over 100% from that. I'm gonna figure out what the adjusted win rate is, and then as a result, assuming 14-player teams, what projected win rate for each faction is based on the agendas we expect those factions to play. The difficult bit will be coming up with data for each of the agendas. But yeah, I didn't want to muddy up the faction theories spreadsheet just yet before I have actual values to put in.
Yeah. Do we know if Annals of Castle Black has been up recently at all?
I don't, I'm afraid, no.
Don't know yet.
I mean, Annals isn't tracking Throne Dwarf formatted stuff, so that's a little different too, right? I mean, it's
no, but if we want to get a hunch for what's the win rate of Lannister Kraken, you could look there, get a feel for it.
I don't know, some buzzers going off in the back of my head saying this is dangerously unscientific because who's playing those, like the top players are playing top decks. Mediocre players play the other decks. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to that are going to be tied there. It's not like you're taking the same player and having that same player play this variety of decks and seeing what they do. So I mean, it's not nothing, but I think in the end we're still going to come up with, hey, Targ's the best house and Stark's a little behind them, and
Sure,
we're
but
going to end up with a dollar value.
yes, but I'm very interested in seeing if we have a top house, how big of a percentage should the value be for Night's Watch in relation to Greyjoy, for example. Maybe unnecessary, very fun.
Okay, well, something to keep in mind when just getting these numbers in the end. I think last year
We broke up.
last year the Regents as a group only spent 10% of their budget on houses. The year before it was closer to 15. I think it'll probably bounce back some this year, but
yeah, I think we're agreed on that.
15.
Sure. I saw somewhere you projected it at 14.6%. What's that about? And not 15 or whatever?
I don't think I actually did. I don't think that was actually a projection.
I just saw the number 14.6% somewhere.
Yeah, what it actually was is, if again, I'm not a master mathematician, and so I did not reconcile what I was saying the houses should be worth, what people actually pay in terms of because what people actually pay does matter. The value, like there's not an absolute. You can say Targ is worth this. Like, I don't think the math even works that way.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not doing a good job of explaining. Mostly, I came up with the 14% by pegging Barra to $1, and then having everything else there, and that ended up at 14-something%. So it didn't seem crazy. And then said, let's adjust these down. The actual ratios made sense.
Well, boys, I'm falling asleep here.
That's very fair.
I'm waking up now. What are you talking about?
I know you are, but it's about to hit 2:30 in the morning.
I'm still falling asleep, and it's 10:30 here.
Yeah, and these numbers will need to change if we're at lower.
Yeah. So what do you think's our kind of what are our big goals here going forward? Let's map out our next in the next 5 minutes here. Let's look at our next week. What are we looking to accomplish this week?
I'm going to try and figure out as scientifically as I can, which will probably end up mostly being bullshit, what the win rate for each faction with each agenda is, and then from that figure out what the 7 best agendas for each faction are, and then from that figure out a rough adjusted win rate and try and get an idea of overall for these factions what percentage of games do we think they'll win, and that will hopefully help inform the values that we've got.
Good.
Because I think right now that's simultaneously the most key part of a lot of our calculations in terms of how much do we think these factions should go for, how much do we think they will go for, how much are we willing to pay type stuff. And I also think that it's currently sort of part rough intuition based off of the faction theories thread and part everyone's rough intuition based off the surveys, which aren't necessarily taking into account the pros and cons of the factions in the format.
Some people. I think you can go to the what people have typed in. I'm pretty sure you, Josh, me, like our larger team, did take into account the format, while there are a few Team Sweden, like Jacob and Tim, they answered and did maybe not take into the account format. I'm gonna populate the questions in that I put on the live draft sheet. When do we draft who? What do we draft, etc. And try and figure out how to answer them, either through formulas or projections or just theorizing.
Sounds good.
And populate with more questions. Answer them in.
I guess what I could do is I can look at these auction projections and go ahead and play them out for player counts, so that when we know the final number, we'll have something to base our numbers on.
And I'll go through and make a list of players who I feel like we need to contact to get a good evaluation of if players we don't seem to have a good handle on. Because I don't want to end up, who was it? It was the, wasn't like Chris Vack, like his first runs were like a nothing bid. Like someone got him for dirt cheap because
nobody knew who he was.
Right. He was just some guy Chris knew, and he knew to bid on him. We want to avoid being in the dark on anyone that may be like that. So I'll start going through and kind of getting intel.
Cool.
All right.
All right, I'm going to bed too.
All right, guys. It was fun. We'll
Bye, guys.
see you again soon.
Ciao.
Night.
Take care.